goodness, it's like Christmas Day. I feel like I should sing a song. I don't know why. This is a great soundtrack. Welcome into the Sports Nation Schedule Release Show. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the ESPN app. I'm Christine Williamson. I got two friends with me, Treavor, Gary Striewski. What's up?
What's going on and what's happening? Just excited to get to these games and all that fun stuff.
This is the one time of year that everybody is excited that other people are going to work, and we're just finding out when their work schedules
That's
are.
a
Yeah, we can't wait for them to go to work.
Wow.
I want people to be just as hyped when we go to work. Like, yeah, they're hosting that show on Wednesday. Yes.
No, I don't need that many eyes on me.
There should be a show about our show schedule. You're right.
Yeah.
Hype us up.
Anyway.
Hype us up. All right, so we have some conversations surrounding the top 5 revenge games. We also have Gary Striewski, Jason Fitz, Dan Graziano, and Mike Reiss joining us in the show. But let's start talking about how we're going to tip this whole thing off.
Yep.
September 9th, Thursday night home opener, Bucs versus the Cowboys. That means Tom Brady versus Dak Prescott. And Tom Brady will be 44 years old, guys. That is an old man. So, Gary, I'm going to ask you this. Is this the year?
Yes.
You used to are you like you're an ex-Patriots
I love Tom Brady.
fan.
I love Tom Brady.
You love Tom Brady.
Yes.
Do you feel like this is the year that we see Tom Brady become an old man?
Ooh, I preemptively said yes.
Yeah, I was going to say.
100% meant to say, no, this is going to be his 22nd season. He'll be 44. He spent nearly half of his life as a professional quarterback, and the conversation in the last half dozen years is the cliff is coming, the end is near. Last year, he threw 40 touchdown passes in his first season with the Buccaneers. The last time he threw 40 or more was 2007. So arguably, he had one of the best seasons as a professional in his 21-year professional career.
Sheesh.
Oh, yeah, of course, the 7 Super Bowls. So Tom Brady is that guy, and he's earned that reputation to be the one where you're having conversations about elite quarterbacks and then Tom Brady. Good quarterbacks and then Tom Brady. He is in a class of his own. So we would be silly at this point in his career to predict any sort of end game. When it's Tom Brady's time, I think it's going to be sort of like a supernova, boom, flash, and he's gone. And that could be when he's 45 at the start of next season, when he's gone on record as saying he wants to play till he's 45. There's no signs of him slowing down or stopping. So we have to give him the benefit of the doubt at this point that when it's done, I think it's just going to be a clean cut, see you later. There's not going to be this slow drip, in my opinion.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't think there's any reason to believe that you need to be the first to the party of saying that Tom Brady's done. Right?
Correct.
Like, it's just, there's no need to assume that you know when it's going to happen and nobody else does. Just wait it out. The time will come. Like you said, supernova sort of effect. You're just going to realize that it's all of a sudden over. And, okay, time to reset the league, just like when LeBron eventually sort of walks away from the NBA game. Like, it's going to be a massive reset on the market at large as far as conversation and competition goes.
And just real quick, that's him personally. Every single starter is back for the Buccaneers. Yeah. Oh, yeah, and then some. So he's 1 year more experienced in the system with the same exact cast of characters. Julian Edelman is going to join soon. That took him to the Super Bowl and won him his 7th. No signs of slowing down.
All right, let's talk about the other side of that matchup. Dak Prescott went down like about 7 months ago. Mm-hmm. He's had 2 ankle surgeries. Trev, what do you expect in Dak's return?
I think a lot of that offense had Dak written all over it just when it was at its peak, scoring 40 points a game without question. They were at their best humming when Dak Prescott was at the helm. The issue with Dallas is always going to be defense. Like, they drafted 6 straight in the 2021 draft for defensive players for a reason. They knew that they had to address that side of the ball. Offense will be fine. I think bone structure is the one thing when it comes to recovering from an injury that you can bet on a little bit more from the standpoint of assuming that the individual will come back as close to they were, more so than any ligament tears or muscle tears or anything like that. Dak has to be the guy for the offense. They paid him to be the guy for that offense, and I do believe he'll be just fine with that offense. Question in Dallas is all defense.
The thing about the Dak injury, obviously when it happened, it was terrible. You never want to see a player at any level have one of those injuries where it's like, oh my gosh, career's at jeopardy. But then it worked in his favor because whoever was playing quarterback at that time, any given week for the Cowboys, it was like, yeah, we need to make sure Dak is 100% secured. So you saw the graphic signing the 4-year, $160 million extension. So, of course, the flower kind of grew between the cracks in the concrete, right? Like, the beautiful thing ended up happening for Dak professionally and personally, securing that contract. So at least he's going into this season full focus on just playing right and getting back to that level, and there's no exterior noise, exterior drama about, hey, maybe he's not the guy. No, he's definitely the guy, and this is just going to be easier to prove it.
So that's how week one is going to start off, but we should probably look at how week one is going to conclude with the Monday night matchup, right, Christine?
We also have a Monday Night Football matchup on September 13th between the Ravens and the Raiders. And to talk about that one, we're going to bring in our very own resident Raiders fan, Jason Fitz, to join us. And Fitzy, I saw you retweet ESPN PR about this specific game. You're very excited about it. It's going to be televised on ESPN and ABC. So I got to ask you about the whole season. How excited are you?
Well, I'm excited about the whole season, but guys, you got to realize that this is a Raiders team that left Oakland to go to Vegas. Now, I grew up an LA Raiders fan that became an Oakland Raiders fan, and I'm from Vegas. So all my worlds collided here. And the original home opener was supposed to be last year, Monday Night Football against the Saints. First time they were ever going to have people in the stands. And I'm thinking, Monday Night Football, I'm going to have access to this game. Well, then last year was what it was. There were never fans in the stands. So flash forward to this year, finding out that we're opening the season with the game on ESPN. It's a sign from God that I'm going to get to go to this thing and be at the first ever game in Allegiant Stadium with fans in the stands. I am beyond pumped for it.
Now, we understand that this matchup is one thing, but when it comes to the idea of the Raiders and it being their year, as you have proclaimed it to be, Gruden ain't had a playoff team yet. What makes this year different, Fitz?
Nothing, but I got to have hope. Here's the thing. The Raiders are squarely behind teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Ravens. They're going to have to get some wins that they wouldn't normally get to get into the playoffs. This game is one of them. I think it's a tone setter. But when you look at this team particularly, yeah, they blew up the offensive line, which has been a curious decision. But realistically, go back and watch last year. And I keep saying this. Also watch Kevin Stefanski and the Browns. I think he gave you the blueprint that we're going to see for the Raiders this year. With the addition of Kenyon Drake, the Raiders are going to try and run the ball more effectively. And they did that throughout the course of the year when they were 6-3 last year. They fell apart running the football, which turned out to be sort of the end of their season because their defense was particularly bad. I don't know that the defense has been fixed, but I do know that John Gruden is going to be committed to running the football like the Browns did. So I think we're going to see a lot more ball control from this Raiders offense. They're going to try and get a big step out of these wide receivers. I think the Raiders are going to be a team that's on the fringe of trying to get into the wild card. But hey, after all these years of bad teams, I'll take that.
So if they're trying to fix things, they tried to address a couple needs within the draft. They may not have done it in the order that most people thought they could have and should have. But, okay, with that being said, your thoughts on the draft as a whole from Gruden and Mayock?
I think the draft as a whole, let's take Leatherwood and the place he was drafted out of the conversation for a second. It's a really solid draft. And, you guys know this. Trevor, you know this. You were dealing with me all day, day 3 of the draft. But I was sitting with some, I think, great minds across our NFL landscape. And, one of them, Jim Nagy, that runs the Senior Bowl, the number of times he was saying, man, you guys got a player there. So I think in later rounds, they got guys that are going to be able to contribute. And Trayvon Merrick, who I thought they were going to get in the first round, turns out who they got in the second round. He's a day one starter. So this is a defense that's going to look much different. And also, I think we really undersold the addition of Yannick Ngakoue, somebody that, while he has bounced from team to team, has had tremendous success. So this Raiders team is going to be a little bit more aggressive. I think the biggest question mark they're going to have is how do you adjust to a new scheme? They have a new defensive coordinator in Gus Bradley that runs a cover 3 zone concept. They've been running man-to-man. That's what they drafted for. So how these defensive players, particularly the corners, adapt to going to a different scheme is going to be really interesting to me.
Fitz, all that being said, I'm going to need you to remove the Raiders hat that you have sewn squarely on your head and shoot the people straight. How many yards is Lamar Jackson going to torch that bottom third defense for on opening night in prime time? And I say that with the utmost love because you mentioned it. They were bottom third in terms of rush defense and pass defense, and Lamar Jackson obviously is the player that he is on prime time. What's he going to do to him?
Let's talk about the Patriots, Gary. Or let's talk about the Red Sox. And how they
Don't deflect.
We're going to hurt each other, Gary. That's what we're doing tonight. You make a great point. Look, the Raiders, the only hope that the Raiders are going to have early in the season, to be real, is that they had a top 10 scoring offense last year. They're going to have to win in shootout fashion, or to the point that I made earlier, Gruden, and this is sort of an under talked about portion of Gruden. He likes to win time of possession and really likes to marginalize how many possessions the other team will get. So the Raiders are happy to have a 15-play drive that takes half the clock off of a quarter, and that's because they're trying to keep the ball out of the other team's hands. Will they be able to do that against Lamar Jackson? I don't think so. Obviously, we know Lamar's going to get his. The question is, will the Ravens defense be able to stop the Raiders offense? I think the answer is yes. This isn't a dream matchup for me coming out of the gates because I still think the Ravens are an incredibly good team. They're a better team than the Raiders, and they're going to come into this game, I would bet, easily a touchdown favorite, rightfully so. That's going to be the real challenge. The only thing I can hope is that early in the year, everybody's trying to get their footing, and maybe that helps the Raiders surprise the Ravens with some looks that nobody will have seen coming into the season.
Fitz, for the record, I'm more of a Tom Brady guy, and I did take a sabbatical from the Patriots last season. I just
What are you a Mookie Betts guy too? Like you following Mookie over to the Dodgers?
That's exactly what we talked about on radio last year. If both of those guys left New England, I was going to remove myself from fanhood for a year, so I might re-enter this season. All right, let's talk about, though, the home opener in Vegas, in that stadium, which just announced they're going to have the Wynn Field Club. You're going to be there. It's going to be a great time. What I need to know from you, Fitz, is what ESPN personality is the first one that comes to mind to get kicked out of the club for being reckless?
And it's not me.
And it's
let's face it. I mean,
it's not you.
If they're going to put an 11,000 square foot nightclub in one end zone in the first game in Allegiant, I'm going to use said nightclub, and it's not going to be any way professional, any way, shape, or form. So, if the Raiders win this game, I'm likely dancing topless on top of tables of complete strangers. So we'll just see where that thing goes. I would take.
They're not going to let fans in.
No, Randy Scott. I think Randy Scott would join me in dancing topless on the tables after bottle
Why
service.
Why are we calling it topless? Isn't it just shirtless?
Just you and Randy Scott.
All right, Fitz. We'll see you later.
What building is HR? I don't know. Trevor, let me know what you think, though. If Trevor wants to come to the club with me.
Wow. Okay. Bye, Fitz.
Bye.
All right, we now welcome in NFL insider Dan Graziano, and I'm not going to ask you anything about being topless or shirtless, whatever it's called.
I was a little worried after the way that.
No, we got you.
Fitz. They won't expect me to be Fitz, obviously, but I was still a little. The way that ended, I was a little bit. What am I walking into here?
We got you. No worries. Let's talk about September 9th, Bucs versus the Cowboys. Gary mentioned this. They have all 22 starters coming back in Tampa Bay. How do you expect this matchup to go?
Oh, well, I think it's going to come down to that Cowboy defense that you guys were talking about. I mean, how fixed is it, right? And can they do anything to stop the Buccaneers offense after a full off season to get it together? Remember that Tampa Bay offense took all year to get to the point where they were winning the Super Bowl, right? Like it was kind of fits and starts throughout the year. They didn't have an off season. Brady was new. Now they'll be prepared. So can Dallas do enough to stop them? And then, of course, Dak and the recovery from the ankle injury. I mean, this is going to be a story all summer, I think, for the Cowboys and around the league. How's he looking once he's on the field and practicing? We haven't seen that yet. Everybody I've talked to there is hopeful and believes that he'll be ready for week 1. And there's no reason to doubt it, but also we haven't seen him in action since he did get hurt. So all eyes on him, and then I guess, can that offensive line hold up against Tampa's pass rush?
So overall, the Bucs kicking this thing off, they obviously won the Super Bowl. Do you think that they are the favorites going into the season?
I think, yes. I mean, look, when we do power rankings, they're going to be number 1 all off season, and you can't argue with it. They won the Super Bowl and brought literally the whole team back. So, yes, but it always goes like that, right? Every time the team wins the Super Bowl, can they repeat? Can they be a dynasty? No one's repeated since the Patriots in 03-04. I mean, that's a significant amount of time ago, and there's a good reason for it. I mean, it's pretty much impossible to do. Tampa Bay had, if you look at the stats and dig into it, probably the best injury luck of any team last year in terms of, not losing guys to injury for extended periods of time, significant players, et cetera. So it's hard to repeat that. It's hard to be that team 2 years in a row. So that's one possible thing that can go wrong. And then, of course, a lot of these games are decided by a bounce here and there. And if you lose the wrong one, then you're in the wrong seeding, and it might not work out for you. So I can't possibly pick them to win the Super Bowl because I just don't see anyone repeating. But, yeah, they'll be I mean, they'll go in as the favorite for sure.
Let's go from the top of the league to the very bottom. Jags, Texans. But high expectations nonetheless. Jags came out with a hilarious sort of rollout of their schedule with Florida Man headlines abound. But when it comes to the headlines for Trevor Lawrence, what do we expect to see from him this season, especially in that debut against Houston?
Yeah, look, I mean, Houston is probably a little bit of a soft landing for him, right? Because we don't know what they're going to look like. They overhauled the whole thing. No idea who's going to be their quarterback for a variety of reasons. And they could be, they're a team that I think you look at who might be picking first in next year's draft, they're in the conversation. And just, again, the way it looks on paper. So, Trevor Lawrence, the first few games, I'm looking at it, Houston, Denver, Arizona, Cincinnati. But then it gets real, right? It starts in week 5. With Tennessee, Miami, Seattle, Buffalo, the Colts. Those were all playoff teams last year except Miami, who was 10-6 and just barely missed it. So it'll get intense pretty quick for Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. And Urban Meyer, by the way, who just like Trevor Lawrence has never done his current job at the level that he'll do it at this year.
Speaking of people who have never done their current job, Tim Tebow, your thoughts?
Oh, Lord.
It's a great segue. My thoughts on segues are that's a high level one. I saw this on the plan for what we were going to talk about. I've thought a lot about this, and I keep coming to the same conclusion, which is that I don't care. Like when the news broke about Tebow to the Jaguars, I said, boy, I don't care about that. Like, it's not going to matter to the NFL season. He'll surely not make the team, and if he does, he'll never play. And then I saw people getting all hot and bothered about it on TV all day yesterday, and I was like, should I care? Like, is this a big deal? And then I thought more about it, and I said, no, I don't think I can get there. I don't think I can. So look, I mean, it's Urban Meyer doing his buddy a favor. 34-year-old Tim Tebow coming out of retirement after 8 years out of the NFL to play a position he's never played before. There's no way that works. So I think eventually the story will fade, but it sure gave us a fun day yesterday to talk about it. But I can't get too fired up about it. That's where I am. I aggressively don't care.
Man, I love how we've rattled off 3 matchups, and really the only solid answer we have at quarterback is the 44-year-old guy entering his second season in Tampa Bay, because every other matchup we've talked about week 1, it's just been question marks. There was just one question mark, Houston versus Jacksonville. Here's 2 of them. Packers at Saints week 1, and you got to think the Saints are like, can we push this back a little bit? Because we still don't have answers either, and neither does Green Bay, kind of. The whole Aaron Rodgers saga drama. What's going to happen between now and then?
Yeah, if you're the Saints, you're sitting there going, hey, guys, take your time to work this all out, right? I mean, if Aaron has to miss a week or 2, that's okay. You got to get this situation right. I think there's nobody I've talked to who's close to this situation who can envision a road back for Aaron Rodgers to be the Packers starter this year. I mean, there are people who have theories about how it can happen, and then there's a thought that, he'll go back there because it'll make the most sense, and where else is he going to go? But the relationship is pretty broken from what I understand. So I think it would have to involve a lot of pride swallowing, probably on both sides at this point. It would probably have to involve a crazy contract extension, which, to my understanding, the Packers have already made efforts in that area and hasn't been well received. So I just don't know. I wish I could tell you, here's the 3 things that have to happen in order for Aaron Rodgers to get back there. But it sounds like it's personal. He's a quarterback with a great deal of pride and stubbornness, who's made a ton of money, who may have the opportunity to go be a game show host. I mean, there's all kinds of strange, kind of unusual factors in this whole thing that wouldn't apply to a similar situation. So I still think he's probably not going to play for the Packers again, but it's gotten quiet around that situation. So I'm eager to see what the next turn in the story is.
Dan, this might be a turn to that story. This is the last one for me. Obviously, they're going to have repercussions with Rodgers no matter what he decides to do. But then here comes the trickle-down domino effect with players on his team. All-pro receiver Davante Adams this week saying, depending on what Aaron does, he's entering the final season of his contract. So depending whether or not Aaron Rodgers stays or goes could dictate what Adams does in the future. The near future.
Yeah, because, I mean, the Packers are going to be talking to Davante Adams at some point this offseason about a contract extension. And if you're Davante Adams, Yeah, I'm sure the Packers could throw enough money at you to make you not care who the quarterback's going to be. But the Packers next season have a big salary cap issue, and they may not be able to throw money around so freely as to convince Davante Adams he can't do better on the open market. And yeah, that's a factor. If Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be here, even if Rodgers comes back, right? Even if they could put everything to the side for this year, there's no reason if you're Davante Adams to think Rodgers is going to be there in 2022. So why are you signing a contract extension right now, not knowing who the quarterback's going to be? Unless he's just made really good friends with Jordan Love over the past year, and they're like, maybe they hang out together or on the road and stuff, and that may be it. But I don't know. I think more likely he's going to need some assurances along the Aaron Rodgers lines before he signs that big deal.
It'll definitely be very interesting to watch how it all plays out. Dan, you're leaving us, but you're coming back very shortly, so don't go too far. We got to talk about some revenge games, the top revenge games. We talked a lot about Tom Brady. He is going to play Bill Belichick. Oh. Tom Brady returning to Gillette for the first time since joining the Bucs and winning a Super Bowl. So, Trev, I'm going to ask you this.
Yep.
What do you feel like this reunion is going to be like?
So, week 4, right? Everybody's greased up, ready to go. New England's fans are in mid-season form. Gary, probably, are you hating at that point, or are we cool?
It's Gary's.
You know I'm rocking with Tom Brady.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. But I feel like the fan base will too. Like there won't be contentiousness between the two sort of entities there, right? Like it's gonna be all love for Brady. Everybody understood what he brought to that franchise, and they're not gonna slight him just because he decided to take people up on his offer when New England and them didn't really want to. And from Belichick's standpoint, he doesn't have emotions. So, like, are we really concerned with the idea of him even having feelings in this?
I've been in the nitty-gritty, though, of Foxborough. When a player who did them wrong or had the perception of doing them wrong. And remember, Tom Brady had the choice. He could have stayed in New England, and that is the gigantic X factor looming over this entire Week 4 scenario and the build-up towards it. But if this was a salary issue where a Bill Belichick came out and said we're moving on, but no, this was a Tom Brady decision. That's the only reason. That's the only little nugget you can kind of sit on, because otherwise it's going to be, depending on how many people are allowed in the stadium, a capacity crowd cheering their brains out, and his return video is obviously just going to make them cry and sick to their stomach, thinking like, dang, he gave us 6 and then he gave Tampa Bay 1 right from the jump. So the reception is going to be good in my estimation, but the lead up to that, you've listened to Boston Sports Talk Radio, they're going to think that it's the it's the absolute worst. So, prepare for the worst, but we can expect the best in that situation.
G-Money, you mentioned how people will be back in the stadium for that game. Do you think that he could possibly be booed?
See, that's the thing. I think there's a sliver of a chance. He gave him 6 Super Bowls. Again, the only reason there's probably going to be a couple boo birds in the crowd because of the way he decided that he didn't. He made the decision to not want to come back to New England.
To an extent,
and he's basically gone on record as saying like it was because of Belichick.
To an extent, right? Like there's two sides to that argument of bringing Tom Brady back when you knew that there was a contract extension possible, but what you had to give him to keep him there wasn't even thought of as like a possibility to provide, because it was like, hey, you either do it for this price or you can get the hell on. And they said, and he said, okay, well, I'm gonna get the hell on. And it's because of all of that, right? Like I think it was so out in the open, just how sort of messed up the dynamic between those two parties was. So yeah, I think they will boo him. I think that nobody escapes the boos, especially in New England. But it'll be almost like in good-hearted fun, right? Like it'll be like, hey, we know we love you, but you still gonna get these boos.
And then Tom Brady's gonna throw for 400 yards and wax the Patriots. He's gonna throw. Mark my words, he's gonna throw 2 touchdowns, one to Rob Gronkowski and one to Julian Edelman. I promise you that's gonna happen, and you better believe I'm gonna ask Mike Reiss, who's on the pulse of everything Patriots, if that has even an opportunity of happening. But yes, it's going to be cold in the lead up, the week leading up to that, all the press conferences with Bill Belichick. He's going to pretend as if he doesn't even know who Tom Brady is.
Does it qualify for a revenge game for Antonio Brown too? He played like it.
Yes, that too. Yes, that too. Played one game and got cut.
The Patriots or Antonio Brown? I feel like, I know, but like, good Lord, that
Rob
guy.
Gronkowski's going to have a damn good time, I'll tell you that much. I mean, he was just in Boston.
Okay, G-Money, you mentioned the fact that you want to ask Mike Reiss about this, so we just brought him in here. Mike Reiss, revenge game between Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. How do you feel like this is all going to go down?
Oh, Christine, Trevor, Gary, this is a great day, right? I mean, I have been so fired up to talk to you, and I thought about this. I'm like, week 4, right? Like Tom Brady holding up the 4 fingers. I'm like, this is like too perfect, right? It's too perfect.
It was a great tweet.
How
Reiss.
is this going to go down? Oh, first of all, it's going to be one of the most special nights in New England sports history. That's the first thing I would say. Like the Patriots, we can look at this from a lot of different angles, but the Patriots are going to try to make this the most special night for their fans and for Tom. And that starts at the top with the owner, Robert Kraft. He didn't want to see Tom go, and so he's going to want to make sure that he feels the love and appreciation from him and all the fans. And I heard you talking will there be any boos? I'm like, if there is one boo in that stadium, I will personally be shocked. Shocked! And that comes from a fan base that actually did boo Adam Vinatieri at one point when Adam Vinatieri came back as a member of the Colts. But I think this is on a whole different level.
No, Mike, I thought you said I will personally, and I thought we were going a different direction with that lead into the sentence. But regardless, we know what one of the starting quarterbacks will be. When it comes to Tampa, TB12 under center. Who's going to be under center for New England at that point?
Ooh, week 4. So Bill Belichick has said right now, Cam is the quarterback, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be the quarterback in week 4. This, to me, is a top storyline. I have a piece up on ESPN.com right now where it's one storyline to watch. My thought is it's the only storyline to really focus on, which is Cam Newton versus Mac Jones. Mac actually just got into town today. They're going to have a rookie mini camp coming up in a couple days. They're really excited about him. They feel like he fits them perfectly. He's so smart. He's a rhythm passer, accuracy, decision making. So Mac has got a chance to steal the job away from Cam, but right now, Bill Belichick's saying not so fast. We want to take the pressure off Mac, make it Cam's job, but there's a lot of time between now and then, and I really believe this. Training camp, preseason will tell us the story, and we should have a much better idea because it's going to be a true competition. I truly believe that.
Mike, let's be in Foxborough Stadium together week 4. I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't want to be the Patriots starting quarterback week 4. Because then after Tom Brady's video and tribute and everybody cheering, you got to be like, man, I'm supposed to follow this guy? I'm supposed to take this franchise into a sliver of what Tom Brady did for him? So let's not talk about Brady for a second, but another returning loved member of the Patriots, Rob Gronkowski. What do you expect his reception to be week 4?
So his might be a little bit different, and I'm not even sure that would be fair. This week, Rob Gronkowski actually returned to town and donated $1.2 million to a playground in Boston. So it just tells you, he gave everything he had to the Patriots physically on the field and really from a charitable sense off the field. Just a really good guy. But the reason his situation to me might be viewed a little bit differently by the fans is he sort of retired and came back, but only to play with Tom. And so I don't know how fans will view that, the same way as Tom, which was hey, 20 years, it didn't work out. He sort of decided he wanted to try something different. Maybe the Patriots could have done more to keep him. I think Tom probably has a little more of the reservoir of goodwill from the fans than maybe Rob does, and I'll be curious to see what the reaction is. But I would think if I had to make a percentage-wise, I'd say 85% cheers for Gronk.
All right, Mike, you're not off the hot seat yet. You heard me allude to it. You talk about retirement and then coming back. Julian Edelman. Tom Brady already said it, a couple weeks ago. Hey, he retired because he was too scared to tell Bill that he wanted to come to Tampa. But that's a very real thing because that's what Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski both did. So likelihood that actually happens.
So I think it's unlikely, and I truly believe this one is a little bit different just because it's a health thing. Julian was trying so hard last year to come back, and the knee just wouldn't allow him to do it. Depending on who you talk to, some will tell you it's a bone-on-bone situation in his knee. So as much as he might want to keep playing, and I truly believe he wants to keep playing. Like, he made the point, like, I said I would play until the wheels fall off, and I really truly believe, like, the wheel is off for Julian. And the one other thought with him is I think being a Patriot from start to finish maybe has a little more meaning to him, especially from a business standpoint. Like, he's going to be pretty big from a movie standpoint, business, and I think the idea of sort of one-time, all-time Patriot maybe plays into that a little bit, and maybe from a business standpoint, it behooves him to sort of say, hey, I'm done. I'm just always going to be a Patriot.
That would make sense. He did say the wheels fell off.
I was waiting for Mike to give me a...
Then, I mean, what are you going to do? You can't do anything. Let's go to an underrated revenge game. We don't know who the quarterback is going to be for the Patriots, but the Patriots are playing the Panthers Week 9. Cam Newton going back to Carolina. What is the likelihood that Cam Newton will be the starter?
Yeah. I mean, like, seriously, like, I think this is fascinating, right? Like, I was curious where that game was going to fall for the Patriots because Cam, right now you'd have to say he's the odds-on favorite to be the starter for the Patriots because based on what Bill Belichick said, and Mac Jones going to have to be great, to take the job away from him. I mean, think about that ticket. Like, I'm so fired up about Tom coming back to New England in week 4. Like, Cam going back to Charlotte and everything he meant to the Panthers. Like, if he's the starter, that would mean he's playing better football, which he's got better players around him now. So, there's a chance that helps him. He's got another year in the system. He's been working out in the voluntary offseason program. So all these pieces, if those fall into place for Cam, like that environment down at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte week 9, like that's going to be crazy. That'll be the hottest ticket, I might say, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but possibly in the history of the Panthers organization, just based on what Cam meant to that organization, it'd be the first time he came back as a member of a different team. So I think that could be an absolutely electric atmosphere if, and that's a big if, Cam's the quarterback.
Mike, we know you have all the plugs on the Pats, one being the practice playlist. What is one song that you want to make sure you hear come practice time for the Pats?
Ooh, how can I pick just one? It's like my favorite thing. I go to practice and it's like Migos plays and I'm like, that's always a good day, right? Like Stir. Love that song. I culture myself, but how about DMX? Like with everything that went on, like they play that. And Patriots players start like dancing at practice. So I love that. It's sort of my window into what players love. So I'll take anything with DMX, especially after everything that's unfolded and seeing how much he meant to the players and how they respond to him.
I would love to see your dance moves, Mike.
Yeah.
How did I do on that? How did I do on that? Was that okay?
That's wonderful.
I thought you were about to hit the Millie Rock.
Oh my gosh, thanks so much for your dance moves and for all your insight, Mike.
Thank you.
All right, another revenge game. We got the Cardinals playing the Texans. That's week 7. J.J. Watt and DeAndre go back to Houston to face the Texans. This is JJ's first season away from Houston since being drafted in 2011. Trev, I'm going to ask you this. Yep. They have a new head coach.
Yep.
They will most likely have a new quarterback. Yep. Do you believe that Nuke and Watt will have animosity towards the Texans in this matchup?
So here's the thing. It was so focused when both JJ and Nuke were there as far as their ire goes, right? It was at head coach and basically upwards. And I know they got the GM up out of the paint, but that chaplain that was there who has a large part to do with the identity of that organization only moved up in his ranking within the front office. So a lot of the ire will always be from both DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt towards that front office. When it comes to like the fan base, you saw how JJ left out of there. Like it was pure love. Even DeAndre Hopkins, he was not slighting anybody in Houston except Bill O'Brien at the time and just about everybody else up top. So, and the McNair family, right? It's like to name names essentially. So they'll have plenty of motivation to perform well because you always want to show what the home team, the old team has been missing. But no, just absolute anger from either one of those individuals to the Houston Texans fan base and team itself.
This is going to be like, if you can institute a mercy rule individually, I think this is where you would have to enact that because DeAndre Hopkins still on Twitter, right?
Yes.
Like, thank you for saving me, Arizona. And
yes.
obviously it ended up being a blessing in disguise because of the dumpster fire that Houston has become, both with the franchise and current personnel there. And of course, yeah, with J.J. Watt. So there's no shot J.J. Watt and DeAndre Hopkins go back into Houston and the fans there not show them their due love. I think that the Cardinals are going to wax the Texans. They are in such disarray, and
Absolutely.
we saw the Cardinals play really good football last year. And J.J. Watt, to your point, has so much to prove. He was, Defensive Player of the Year how many times, and an All-Pro guy, and injuries have caught up to him. And it's not like he's getting any younger. He's on the back nine of his career. He's on a team in a situation where he doesn't have to be the guy. He can just be a guy and be productive. So I think they are going to very much look forward to that return in Houston. DeAndre more than either of them, though.
So a lot of times we see in the NBA, there's like video tributes. We talked about the fact that the Pats will most likely have a video tribute to Tom Brady. Do we feel like when J.J. Watt and Nuke go back to Houston that there will be a video tribute for them?
I feel like you missed the opportunity for Nuke, but like J.J. Watt's definitely getting one, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Got to.
Yeah, they both will. They're gonna have the video, and it's gonna start with J.J. running out of the
American flag
of the tunnel with the American flag because that's what he did the decade that he was there. It's gonna be all love for those two players. I bet you they kind of are bummed out that Bill O'Brien's not going to be there, so they can't look across the sideline and do
throw
stuff
the middle finger, Earl, and stuff.
do stuff that would be blurred on a national television broadcast. They're probably a little bit irked about that. To be honest with you.
That's fair.
Wow. Okay, so let's go to our third revenge game. We got Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff. Jared Goff is returning to LA to play the team he led to the Super Bowl in 2018, and Matthew Stafford faces the franchise that drafted him #1 in 2009. Gary, looking back on this trade that happened in March, does the acquisition of Stafford make the Rams an automatic champion contender?
They were just in the Super Bowl not too many seasons ago with Jared Goff, the jilted ex at this point. So, yes, of course, I think it does. I mean, they're strong offensively. They only get better. Even though Matt Stafford and Jared Goff, statistically, they're not that much different from one another. I think Matthew Stafford finished 12th last season in total yards. Jared Goff finished 14th. So I think they're kind of one and the same. Do I think that they're Super Bowl favorites? No. Contenders? Sure. But I don't think we need to crown them just yet by getting Matthew Stafford, who is just an upgraded version of Jared Goff.
One with more experience, but I think has more physical tools than Jared Goff. I don't think there's any shame in saying that. For Jared Goff, it's interesting because, he needed a fresh start. And so, I don't know that he can have angst towards the Rams. It's more so, hey, thanks for giving me another opportunity in the league, essentially, just kind of moving me on to somebody that would actually take me. Because Lord knows if he got released, I'm not entirely sure who's picking up Jared Goff as a quarterback. They found a home for him where he at least gets a new look for a franchise.
You don't think that he should come back with a little bit of petty? The way they disbanded
how much
him?
can he have, right? People manufacture chips on their shoulder. I get that. But you gotta stand up and pull one out of your tail end if you are Jared Goff, because they sat you in the optimal position for you to succeed as best as they could. And look, it just didn't pan out.
One guy who's not sweating it is Matthew Stafford. He's up in LA cooling. He's the new boyfriend who's wondering why the ex is mad at him. No, she chose me. What do you mean? Don't be mad at me. Be mad at the organization. So, I think Stafford's cooling.
Yeah.
So, on that same note, Detroit isn't necessarily a place that you want to go. So, no offense, Detroitians.
Jesus.
However, that's Goff's new home. How do we feel about this? The weather's not great. You go from LA to Detroit,
Just to play in a controlled environment.
I love Detroit. I just want to say that down barrel. I love Detroit. Christine hates it. I love
you. I have no problem saying that. I've never been there. It just seems like a great place to be.
No, but in honesty, yes, I agree that it's certainly a tempo change. It's certainly a culture shock. It's a lot of different things. But again, I go back to the idea of a fresh start for Jared Goff, which isn't going to be a bad thing.
And what are the expectations in Detroit? Exactly, none.
Right.
They aren't. They're not going to win their
Matt
division.
Campbell is biting kneecaps.
Yeah, exactly. There's not. There's no expectation to do anything profound in Detroit, and that's of course been sort of the Achilles heel in the franchise, and that's why they drove off Barry Sanders and Megatron, and the list goes on.
That's really
There's no
hurtful.
Expectations, so he's just going to go there, play quarterback, and call it a day after 17 games.
I'm sure I will love Detroit if I ever go there.
Detroit's a nice city. Detroit is.
It is legitimately.
Love.
Let's bounce back.
All right, let's talk about some red zone breakers and have this discussion. We're going to welcome back Dan Graziano. There he is. All right, so we got Packers versus Chiefs, Week 9, and we obviously know the drama that's going on with the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. The question is, has the Packers front office done enough to surround Rodgers with the best weapons right now in his career?
I mean, I'm kind of in the minority on this. I say yes. I think the narrative that the Packers haven't put enough around Rodgers is false. I mean, he had the best offensive line in the league last year in terms of run blocking and pass blocking. Devontae Adams, you can make a case, is the best wide receiver in the league. The running back group was 3 deep, including Aaron Jones at the top, who's one of the best running backs in the league. They've put together a good defense. I just think that, I mean, Rodgers is great, and I think he elevates everyone. But I think there's this sense that he's doing it all himself, and I just don't feel like the last couple of years in Green Bay back that up. To me, it seems like a stacked team. And that's part of my issue with Rodgers and where he is right now, which is where are you going to go that's a better situation? Where are you going to go that gives you a better chance to win this year's Super Bowl than the team you were already on that won 13 games and went to the NFC Championship game each of the last 2 years?
When it comes to the dynamic between Aaron Rodgers and the front office and all the sort of bad juju there, I found it interesting that his head coach, Matt LaFleur, kind of sided with Aaron in this. Like, it wasn't necessarily an endorsement of Aaron's sort of takes on this matter, but he certainly didn't slight him for having the disgust that he did with the front office. So how does that dynamic play out in season?
Well, I think, the relationship between LaFleur and Rodgers, from my understanding, has been very positive for both years that LaFleur has been there. It seems like Rodgers' issue is with the GM, and I think if you're Matt LaFleur, you're not necessarily throwing your GM under the bus, but you are making it clear that, like, hey, I mean, if the end game for the Packers is to get Aaron Rodgers back, then the right place for Matt LaFleur to be, publicly and privately, when he talks to Aaron Rodgers, is, hey, if you come back, we were working real well together. Communication's good. You won MVP. We operated the offense at a high level. We can build on that. So, yeah, if I'm the head coach in this dispute, like, the GM's going to be the bad guy on one end, Rodgers going to be the bad guy on the other end. I'm in the middle. I got to have both guys be okay with me. But I think in terms of Rodgers and in terms of what he's saying publicly, LaFleur's in the right place in terms of, hey, we want this to work. I think we can win the Super Bowl if Aaron comes back, and I hope he does.
Speaking of getting to Super Bowls, I want to bring it back to Week 2. Chiefs visiting the Ravens. They played last season. Of course, everybody pitted it as Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson. The Chiefs beat them. They beat him handily. The Ravens obviously giving Lamar Jackson a little bit of help on the outside, signing former Chief Sammy Watkins and drafting Rashad Bateman. So do you think Baltimore has done enough to make themselves a challenger against Kansas City in the AFC, Dan?
No question. I think they are, but psychologically it's been a major problem, right? Because Lamar hasn't beaten them yet, and it's not that the Chiefs have been that much better. I mean, Baltimore was as good a team as any 2 years ago when Lamar was winning MVP. They didn't get a shot in the playoffs at the Chiefs because they couldn't get past Tennessee, but they've lost to them in the regular season, and it's been a tough hurdle for Lamar and the Ravens to get over. So they've got to do it before we think they can do it, right? That's the whole thing with Baltimore. But yeah, they're going to be a good enough team. Look, I think they'll be better on the line. The line had some losses last year. Ronnie Stanley going down, Marshall Yanda retired, and it took a while for that offense to come together. But if you remember, late November and through December, this was as good a team as any in the league. I think they won their last 5 games. They kind of went roaring into the playoffs. And just, they didn't win. But I think they were looking, if the regular season had gone on another 2 or 3 weeks, that might have been a division champion, the way they were going and the way Pittsburgh was going by the end of the season. Of course, Cleveland was in that mix too. But yeah, I think Baltimore is right there in terms of the team. You look at Buffalo, you look at Cleveland, the teams that can challenge the Chiefs in the AFC, they deserve to be counted among those without a doubt.
Patrick Mahomes got beat up a little bit in the Super Bowl. It was not fun to see.
A little bit.
The Chiefs, just a tad, just a little bit. So the Chiefs did prioritize making sure that they're beefing up their offensive line a little bit. Do we feel like that's a big deal?
Oh, huge. I mean, that was the whole thing, right? Because he's running around like crazy. This guy doesn't need a lot of time to make magic happen, and he can maneuver and throw on the run. We've seen it over and over again. The Chiefs line in the Super Bowl was completely toast. I mean, like shredded to the point where they couldn't do a thing If it weren't for Mahomes being as incredible as he is, he'd probably get sacked 10 or 11 times in that game. So, getting Duvernay Tardif back, who took the year off to be a doctor in Canada and fight COVID. We all know that great story about him. Replacing, Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz at the tackle positions with, Orlando Brown coming in there from Baltimore, Kyle Long coming out of retirement. I mean, they have really great players on the offensive line. The only issue with that is when you put new guys together on an offensive line, sometimes it takes them a while to all kind of get on the same page and working together. I think the Chiefs' offensive line will be really good at some point this season. I think it'll probably be better in November than in September. So if you want to catch them, it might be better to catch them early in the season if you're, say the Baltimore Ravens.
Let's go to late in the season then. Week 14, Bills, Bucks. You got the former reigning just everything of the AFC East, Tom Brady. And then you got the guy who a lot of people hope to be the reigner of everything in the AFC East in Josh Allen. Which of those two teams, in your estimation, Dan, do you believe has a better shot at getting to the Super Bowl?
Oh, man. I think it's probably the Bucks because I think the AFC field looks more crowded at the top, right? If you're Buffalo, you got to fight your way through your division. I think Miami looks like they're on the upswing if Tua looks good, and the Patriots should be better. You've got Cleveland and Baltimore looking good in the north. And Pittsburgh, they don't look good, but they always seem to find a way, right? And then you look at the Chiefs, obviously, in the west. So I think that's a tough. So if you're Tampa Bay, like maybe the Saints are taking a step back because of their quarterback issues. Maybe the Packers aren't what they are because if Rodgers isn't there. The NFC looks a little more gettable to me. But Buffalo's got, I think, as good a shot as anybody in that AFC. I mean, if you look at their roster, top to bottom, there is nothing not to like.
Well, we like you. Thanks so much. There's nothing not to like about you, Dan. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It's fun.
That was awkward. I feel like I should make you feel awkward. We said we wouldn't ask you about being topless, so there you go.
I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Dan. Dan's the man.
All right, so we know that we are all fans of NFL teams. My fandom is pending right now.
Right.
Trevor, yours is not. We know that you're a Falcons fan.
Yeah,
So
better for worse.
How are you feeling about this upcoming
Look, so I'm going to give y'all a three-pronged approach to how I'm going to tackle this Falcons season. The matchup that I'm most excited about, and we will get to this in a second, all right? But
Kyle Pitts is going to want to fight you when he sees you by the
No,
way.
right?
When he sees you in person, Kyle Pitts is gonna
Pump it. We'll get right into it. Since they don't want to light a fire under my tail end, I did not say that Kyle Pitts was a bad fit for this daggone team. I said that you should have been looking to the daggone future when it comes to the Falcons, because you daggone well we are not a tight end away. See, you done got me started. I was going to approach this from a very measured approach, right? I wasn't going to go into this hot. I wasn't, Garrett.
I just want to touch the vein in your
You really do. You really do. You just find a way to just get right there underneath my skin.
He's going to want to fight you.
He shouldn't want to fight me because I think he's going to be excellent, okay? I think he's going to be excellent.
But you feel like the Falcons shouldn't have picked
We're
him.
going to go 7-10, and then what I'm going to do.
Shortchanged him.
I believe they shortchanged him?
Yeah.
No. I think they're going to do the best that they can. Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot did a hell of a job in the draft, right? It would have been a wonderful draft had it not been after a 4-12 season, right? I think if the Falcons had left 9-7 even, like just over 500, that's a team that you can say, you know what, if we tweak a couple things on offense, if we kind of boost up what we lost in the secondary that performed decently well, that's cool. But that's not the case for the Falcons, right? And so we look at the schedule as it stands. You right out the gate, you got the Eagles, and then you're following up with a divisional matchup against the Bucks, and you're right back into the AFC East and traveling to the Giants, right? So a tough stretch out the gate to kind of get reacclimated with everything when you know that all three of those offenses are expected to be better than they were last year. Jalen Hurts is finally the guy under center, and they got him some tools on the outside. The Bucks are the Bucks. We just talked about how everybody coming back. And the Giants, speaking of comebacks, Saquon Barkley off of an ACL tear. I don't know what we're going to do down the middle of the field defensively that is going to make me feel as though we're going to be able to stop a nosebleed. Like, it's just going to be really trying to sort of work with this team and to have any set of expectations. I do better when I expect the absolute worst from my team. It tends to kind of work out psychologically for me. So I'm going to enter this season doing just that. I'm going to assume that the record ain't going to change too much more from 4-12. We'll boost it to maybe 7-10 and kind of say, look, surprise me. I'm so happy with that.
You think it's going to be a coin flip interdivisionally? In terms of playing each one.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's even like a 50-50. We're going to have to catch a couple teams slipping here and there. I think, like, at best, we go 500 in the division, and at worst, it could be like where we only sneak out 2-3 wins with it. But, again, it's just that there were a lot of things to fix for the Falcons, not just one thing. And so how do you expect to make that change and improve as much when you have brand new personnel in there from a front office standpoint and a coaching standpoint?
So there's 17 games this season. That could mean another L in the losing column, unfortunately.
Thank you, Christine.
However,
shouts to you.
They can't lose every single game. Is there any matchup that you're most excited to see this season?
Oh, I'm just always excited to play the Saints. Just because I'm ready to talk trash to their fan base at any time.
Especially this year, because if anybody has it worse as currently constructed, it's the Saints.
At least
you
at the
have
quarterback
your answer
position.
at the quarterback position.
Exactly. At least at the quarterback
Kind of
position.
important.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely the most important player on the field. No, ain't no doubt about it. So I get to roast whoever lines up on the center because Lord believe. Look, Taysom Hill, you line up on the center as a starting quarterback, you're getting these tweets off. I just hope you know that.
Wow. Okay, so in order to talk a little bit more about this, there he is. We got Paolantonio joining us. And we're going to talk about quarterbacks because the conversation going into the draft was all about quarterbacks. Actually, the whole entire offseason has been about quarterbacks. And we got Treavor Lawrence, number 1 overall, Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, and they go head-to-head week 16. Which of these rookie quarterbacks do you feel like is going to have the better rookie season?
Wait a minute. Did you say week 16? Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson, week 16 with one more game to play. I mean, that to me is the key element when you're talking about these two young quarterbacks playing late into a season that's going to have, for the first time ever, 17 games. I think when you look at the rookie players in the National Football League, many of whom are not used to playing into the month of January, these two guys obviously are, but I think, taking the wear and tear and the pounding in the NFL is much different than the college game. So when I look at this particular matchup, I'm a host of the NFL matchup show, and I look at this particular matchup, and I'm looking at Robert Saleh, the head coach, and he's going to be designing the Jets defense, coming after Darrell Bevell and that offense of the Jaguars. And he knows that offense because they faced one another in the NFC West. And he knows that Bevell is going to be throwing the ball all season long and probably relying more on the pass than Urban Meyer wants him to. So in this particular game, I'm looking for Trevor Lawrence to be on the run or at the very least under a lot of pressure in this football game. So I'm actually going to give the edge to Zach Wilson and the Jets in this game.
Unbelievable that the Jets are assumed to be in a better position, but I think that's what experience does for you. Speaking of experience, we're going to continue asking you to look into your crystal ball. We'll go to week 15 this time. Packers against the Ravens. Here's how we'll frame this, because we don't necessarily know that Rodgers will be under center for Green Bay by the time that even gets to that point in the season. So which of those franchises will be better off by the time we hit week 15 and it's the Packers against the Ravens?
Well, there's two things that are going on here with Packers-Ravens. First of all, the Ravens organization, and you heard General Manager Eric DeCosta talk about this week. They are really focused on their December games and their final 4 games of the season. They believe in the Belichick model, that the team gets better quarter by quarter by quarter. And you saw that, as Dan Graziano pointed out a little while ago, you saw that with the Ravens at the end of last season. I covered a lot of those games. They came to rely more on their defense at the end of the year and more on Lamar Jackson running the football, what they do best. And I think Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, they're very, very close. They're very close to getting to the Super Bowl. And the Ravens are all in on Lamar Jackson. And that's why they went out and they helped them quite a bit from the wide receiver position and extra pass rusher. What they want to do is blitz the quarterback. Remember, they had the second highest number of blitzes of any team in the league last year. And Wink Martindale added another pass rusher. The league as a whole blitzed 28% of the time last year. That's the most in 5 years. So you guys were just talking about offensive line play. So important, but also so important to have a quarterback who is on the move, who can move and get away from the blitz. And I think that sets up the Ravens to be very close this year to getting to the AFC Championship game and maybe a berth in the Super Bowl. I actually have the Ravens as my pick early on going to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
I like that. I like that.
Wow, okay, and that's actually a perfect little segue into the question I'm about to ask you right now that revolves around Week 11 and the Kansas City Chiefs, which a lot of people are probably going to pick to come out of the AFC, except, of course, Sal Pal. So, the Cowboys versus the Chiefs, Week 11. What I want to ask, first off, is the Dad and Patrick dynamic there, but the Cowboys are kind of getting shortchanged here because that is on a Sunday, and then they play Thursday in the Thanksgiving game against the Raiders. So, Sal, let's start Week 11, Cowboys at Kansas City.
Okay, so Cowboys at Kansas City, then they go home after 4 days and play at home. So, it's a close, it's not that far of a trip. Playing in Arrowhead is tough. The key thing about the Cowboys is Dak Prescott's leg and how he has recovered and how he plays early on. And whether or not, the wear and tear on that injury sort of has a multiplier effect as the season goes on. We don't know about that until we see him in training camp, till we see him in the mandatory minicamp, till we see him in a tune-up in preseason, and then in the first and second quarters of the season, by the time he gets to Thanksgiving, where is Dak Prescott health-wise? Very, very important. Same thing for Patrick Mahomes, the second. Patrick Mahomes had surgery on that turf toe the day after the Super Bowl. That's how much it was hurting him against the Bucs. He was under pressure, a Super Bowl record 29 times, because Andy Reid forgot to protect him properly. We know that. And so now we went out and got an offensive line. Andy Reid, I covered him for 14 years in Philadelphia. He's always very good at figuring out the adjustment after it's too late. And that's exactly what happened in that Super Bowl.
That's some tape to look at.
So Dak Prescott and Patrick Mahomes, just because they're coming off of those injuries, may not be the MVP this upcoming season. We know what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. Nobody knows what's going on with Aaron Rodgers. That's the answer. So who do you expect to be the MVP coming out of this next NFL season?
Oh boy, it's going to be TB12. I think it's Tom Brady.
Yes.
I mean, I love the where this Bucs team is getting everybody back. He and Bruce Arians now have a full season, a full non-COVID off season to get things together. I think the Bucs are going to add to their win total this season, especially with Drew Brees retired and a change in the coaching staff and the hierarchy in Atlanta, and Carolina still rebuilding. I think the Bucs really have, of all of those teams that went to the playoffs last year, and of course they won the Super Bowl, they have really the easiest road back to a 12 or 13 win season in a 17 game season, especially because if you look at strength of schedule, they have the third easiest strength of schedule. First is the Birds, the Eagles, Cowboys, second easiest schedule, and the Bucs. When was the last time, and this will be something for our stats and information gurus to figure out, when was the last time that the defending Super Bowl champs had a bottom 5 strength of schedule with third easiest schedule in the NFL coming off their Super Bowl championship? I cannot remember this ever happening. So I think the Bucs getting everybody back and determined to repeat and having a non-COVID offseason with all the changes in their favor in their division and the third easiest schedule, I think it's all set up for Brady to go back to the Super Bowl. I really do.
Sheesh, you're talking to a Tampa native and a Tom Brady fan. Not me. Gary's a Tom Brady fan. So we both like what you're saying.
Appreciate that one, Sal Pal.
Thanks so much, Sal Pal. All right, guys, we have not talked to Gary Striewski. I don't know who your team is, actually.
I already told you that. I took
you said you're not a Patriots fan? Okay.
Last year after Tom Brady and Mookie Betts, my two favorite athletes, left Boston. But I am so glad that we just had Sal on and saying what he said, because I didn't want to say it, but now I feel like I have free reign.
You got Mac Jones behind you.
I literally looked at Tampa's schedule and I said they could go 17-0.
Well, yeah, because they're in the NFC South. Yeah.
Regardless, an added game and everybody else who they have to play. See, Sal came with the facts. Third easiest strength of schedule.
Yes.
Obviously, we're in May, right?
Playing the Falcons.
Anything can change. But I truly feel like the Buccaneers could run the table and go 17-0. And you know Tom Brady said recently that he would trade 2 of his Super Bowls to go back to 2011 when they went undefeated and obviously lost to the Giants. So you know he might not outwardly say it, but that's the one thing that he needs to check off of his list. 7 Super Bowls, but the undefeated season went by the wayside. So watch them start picking up steam and start the season 7-0, 9-0, 11-0. People are going to start that conversation. Watch. And then we're going to run this tape back and be like, Sal Pal started it, and Gary felt like he could go in there and bring it home. I think they're going to run the table.
Oh, my God. We don't have to do that, do we?
Are you a Bucs fan? Like,
He's a Tom Brady fan.
I'm a Tom Brady fan. Everybody
jumped ship.
Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that.
I don't know about everybody, Gary, because I'm pretty sure I thought you were a Pats fan, dog.
When he was with the Patriots, you betcha. You betcha. And I'm a Denver guy, so anyway.
You're like me, Gary. Your
Yes.
fandom looks a lot like mine.
Yeah.
Fraudulent. Is what it is.
It's like water. It's like water. It takes shape.
Exactly.
It just flows.
I personally love it. Okay, so that's your NFL season. You got it. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
Tom
We'll
Brady,
see you next
NFL
year.
regular season MVP, Super Bowl MVP. Count it. That's 8 of them.
Okay.
Oh.
Bye.